Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council held at 6:30 p.m. on May 14th, 2024. Kisukukit, we acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakut Atnukliat. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from Yakut Atnukliat and are members of the Ktunaxa-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I'd like to take a moment before we begin to mark the passing and honor the life and the legacy of service of retired firefighter Tom Hopkins, who passed away in April. Tom became an auxiliary firefighter with Fernie Fire Rescue in 1986 and was hired as a career firefighter in February 1999, retired from the city of Fernie in 2020. Our thoughts go out to his family and to all his friends and former colleagues. His passing is a great loss to this community. From that, I'd like to comment that this week is Local Government Awareness Week from May 12th to 18th. And this week we have a couple of events. There's the Mayor and Council in the community living room at the Fernie Heritage Library on May 15th, so tomorrow evening. And story time with the mayor on Friday morning. As well, May 15th is Asset Management Awareness Day, which is getting a bit granular. And we're also celebrating the opening of our skate park this Thursday. And I'll look to Ms. Rose. I think it starts at 3 p.m. on Thursday. 4 p.m. Thank you. 4 p.m. on Thursday at the skate park. And just a note that next week is National Public Works Week, May 19th to 25th. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And I will ask for approval of the agenda and the late items as follows. So we've added audited financial statements, the auditor's report, and an in-camera matter. And the following staff recommendation that to include the 2023 audited financial statements and auditor's report at 11.1, along with an in-camera item at 16.1, be added as late items at the amended agenda for the regular meeting of May 14th, 2024 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll now look for a mover and a seconder for adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on April 23rd, 2024. Moved by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? All in favor? That is also unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration or issuance of the permit, and a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And so looking at the gallery, I don't see anyone indicating a desire to, oh, okay. No, typically we go to the room first, please. If you can identify yourself and.
Okay. Hi, Chad Hughes with the Elk River Alliance. I just wanted to make a quick comment on upcoming motion 13.1, considering the feasibility of water meters in the city of Fernie. The Elk River Alliance has spent a lot of time trying to understand where our water is coming from. But in order to weather the upcoming climate crisis, we need to understand where our water is going. 40% of the water that goes into the mains disappears into the earth through cracks and loss. And if we don't know where the rest of that water is going, then trying to manage that is not going to happen. I come from a country where there's significant drought issues. I've seen a lot of brown lawns. I've seen a lot of water restrictions. trying to understand where our water is going and where it's being used is the first step to avoiding those sort of blanket water restrictions that people seem to so hate. But unless we understand that, that's the direction that we'll have to go. Getting on top of this now is going to save us a lot of heartache in the next 10 to 20 to 30 years. So I encourage the council to consider this now rather than scrambling to figure things out later down the track. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Very much appreciate your input. And now we'll turn to Ms. Rhodes. Is there anyone online who's indicated a desire to speak? Thank you. This moves us along to item 10.1, the tax rate bylaw. And I'll ask Mr. McConnell to read the recommendation, if you don't mind.
Certainly, the recommendation is that tax rates bylaw number 2516, 2024 be adopted.
Can I get a mover? Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed?
If I may, Your Worship, it's Councillor Shoesmith, Councillor Zordia Kelly, and Councillor Ramadas opposed.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for item 10.2. I'll ask Mr. McConnell again to read the recommendation, please.
The recommendation is that zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment bylaw number 271, bylaw number 2507, 2023 be adopted.
A mover? Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Nixon seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 10.3, another zoning bylaw amendment. Mr. McConnell, if you don't mind.
I will, Your Worship, and I should note that it's this one, I believe, is our last R1 to R1B
Yes, I think you're right.
one.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure our planning staff are up before this moment. Zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment bylaw number 274, bylaw number 2511, 2024 be adopted.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. I think I saw Mr. Lennox's lip quiver there. Item 10.4, a presentation from our report from our project engineer, Ms. Line. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Let me just pull it up. So for my first presentation of the evening, I'm here to talk to you about the third reading of the waste regulation and municipal ticket information amendment bylaws for support of the organics program. Both bylaws, there's been some changes since I was here last with the first and second readings. Both bylaws had the advertised in the newspaper portion removed from them since the first and second readings, as that is not a requirement for enacting these bylaws, and an enactment date of July 30th, 2024, which would be the first date of organics pickup, was set for both bylaws as well. And then there was minor editing for grammar on the waste regulation bylaw amendment bylaw. And with that very short presentation, I move for both to be read for the third time, please. Thank you.
Questions from council while we have Ms. Line before us? Seeing none, I'll just double check online. I don't see anyone with a hand raised. This has been a very thoroughly developed program, so thank you for that. So I will ask Mr. McConnell then to read the recommendation.
There's two recommendations. The first one is that consolidated waste regulation by law number 1845, amendment bylaw number 2512, 2024 as amended be given third reading.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Councillor Audia Kelly and Councillor Ramadassi are opposed, as is
And-
Councillor Shoesmith.
Shoesmith, there.
Yeah.
And the second one is that consolidated municipal ticket information bylaw number 2041, amendment bylaw number 2513, 2024 as amended be given third reading.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillor Ramadas, Councillor Shoesmith, and Councillor Audia Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Line. Item 11.1, 2023 financial statements, a report from our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Hello, Council. No report from me. It'll be from Mr. Price from GPI Chartered Accountant. But I am here to answer any questions from Council. And if there's any that I don't know the answer to, because we haven't been with the final version of these for very long, my next report is on the 28th, which is the Q1 financial update for Council. So I can bring back any outstanding questions at that meeting. And I just want to thank Mr. Price and his team. As always, he and them have been a pleasure to work with this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burden. Mr. Price, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mayor and Council, this is our financial highlights for 2023. I'll hit some of the highlights, though I won't go into any detail. If there are any questions, as Bren said, we'll cover them off if we can here on the spot. If we need to take a little bit more information, then we'll get back to you. Revenue was $26.5 million compared with a budgeted amount of $28.4 million. The transfers from other governments was $6,033,000. This is less than the $8.1 million that was budgeted for. The lower amounts were due to fewer grants for the 2023 capital projects. Expenses were $21.3 million. If we remove the non-cash amortization expense of $4.2 million, it results in $17.1 million in expenses. This is more than the budgeted amount of $16.3 million after the budget amount of non-cash amortization was removed. Parks, Recreation, and Culture, as well as Protective Services, were both higher than budgeted, which is why the expenses were higher. Tangible capital assets had a net increase of $4,438,000. This includes the work done on the Annex Dike, street reconstruction and paving, land, building, and equipment acquisitions, as well as work on the water and sewer systems. The additions totaled $8.6 million and amortization of $4.2 million. Debenture debt decreased by $149,000 to bring an outstanding balance to $2,121,000. There were no new debentures issued during 2023. The temporary borrowings had $600,000 paid during 2023, leaving a remaining balance of $1.2 million. Cash and temporary investments totaled $25,124,000 compared to $12,206,000 prior year, an increase of $12,918,000. The increase in the cash is due to a large decrease in accounts receivable of $5,869,000 and an increase in the deferred revenue of $5,095,000. Development cost charges are $2,959,000 compared with the balance of $2,658,000 in 2022. The annual surplus for 2023 was $5,240,000. The cumulative surplus now sits at $124,383,000. Tangible capital assets represents $117,915,000 of that surplus. Net financial assets are $6,468,000. I also have some information here as far as the trends on the financial statements for the last 10 years. I'm going to have you move to one more page there, Bryn, that shows the graph. So this is our graph showing the financial position, the 10-year trend. The assets over the past 4 years has seen an increase in financial assets, increase in financial liabilities, and the net financial assets. The net financial assets are now close to 61% of their peak in 2015. The 10-year trend to financial assets has increased over the past 10 years. The balance increased in 2023, reaching a new high of $28,409,000. The trend in financial liabilities increased from 2016 through 2023. The large increase in 2023 is due to higher deferred revenue. The year-over-year increase was $5,095,000. Net financial assets increased between 2012 and 2015, peaking at $10,613,000. From 2016 through 2019, the net financial assets decreased by $11,800,000 to a 2019 year-end deficit balance of $1,185,000. The $7,586,000 of that decrease happened during 2019. In 2020 through 2022, the net financial assets increased to $5,667,000, which is close to the median of the last 10 years. Go to the next graph, please, Bryn. Thank you. Operations for our last 10 years. Revenue and net surplus both decreased in 2023, with expenditures increasing year over year. Revenue for 2023 was $26.5 million, and expenditures increased in 2023 to $21.3 million. Our next graph, please. Cash investments and debt for the 10-year trend. For the prior 10 years, cash and investments ranged from a low of $8,493,000 to a high of $25,100,000 reached in 2023. For 2023, there was no new debt issued, and principal payments reduced the balance at the end of the year, at the end of 2023 to $3,321,000, down from the 2022 balance of $4,071,000. Our next graph, please. Tangible capital assets, 10-year trend. Tangible capital assets increased in 2023 to all the improvements on the dike and trail systems. And those are the trends you can see each year. Your tangible capital assets are increasing, and that's expected to continue to happen. That's a presentation. Unless there's any other questions, happy to answer them if I can.
Look to council. Any questions? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious why our amortization expense was about 1.8 million higher than budgeted.
Mr. Burdett.
Thanks, Councillor Hamilton. The main reason for this is the new ARO standard, where we have to record a future liability to return any assets we have back to their previous state. So the big one that we have is like asbestos in most of our buildings. And that really is the main one that we identified as part of that. And then I guess I am in discussions with other directors of finance of other municipalities to find out exactly how they're planning for the long-term impact of these on their financial statements. Because as you said, amortization did go up, but for now it is our best estimate at a future liability way down the road. Thank you for that.
Further?
Oh, and ARO stands for Asset Retirement Obligation.
And sorry, just for clarity, that's a new standard that we have to meet, correct?
Yep, as of the 2023 year end. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. My question is from the report where there was a statement in the report that says that nearly all departments were slightly over budget in 2023 due to the current inflationary environment. And my question, Your Worship, is do we have a sense of what the inflation rate was that the city experienced last year from the financials?
Mr. Burdett?
Thanks, Councillor McIsaac. I mean, as you know, the BC inflationary rate was 3.9%. Ours, I would say, is higher, though I don't have a number for you. Mainly because, you know, our biggest expenses are things like construction materials and fuel and benefits, all of which are higher than that 3.9%. I can try to estimate a percentage for you on the May 28th meeting. But as you're aware, the property tax increases in the last 2 years have been higher than that 3.9% as we try to you know, not fall too behind the inflationary market that we're in.
Thank you. I wouldn't mind actually seeing what that real number looks like, because we are using that 3.9 number, which at least anecdotally we're aware that doesn't actually meet the numbers that we're using, because we have much more expensive things which are higher than that rate. But it would be useful to look at that in comparison to how we're doing our tax rate, whether we're even meeting the inflation or whether we're perhaps exceeding it. So I would like to see that number if possible.
Thank you. Is that possible, Mr. Burdett? I think you indicated it was. Sorry.
Yeah, I will certainly put something together, and I'll try and split out, you know, new expenses versus ones that only increased because of inflation. Try and measure it a little more accurately that way.
Thank you. And I'd be curious too, in terms of asset retirement obligation, when you talk to your counterparts and get a sense of how they're tracking it, how far out we have to look. A community is a perpetual thing, but we have assets. The one that comes immediately to mind is wastewater treatment facility. At some point, do we have to account for its decommissioning and reclamation in that asset retirement obligation?
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Specific to that, are you talking about a potential new facility or the one we currently have?
No, I'm just thinking of what we currently own, and at what point do we have to factor something of that magnitude into our asset retirement obligation?
Right. I'll bring that specific asset back to you on the 28th. And as for the discussions with other CFOs, it's a very long-term discussion, and so I'll share what I know with you on the 28th, but it may be quite a bit more discussion.
Yeah, and thank you. And you don't even have to bring that information back that I've just asked about. Just as the picture clarifies for you how it's being applied across municipalities across the province, it'd be nice to get a sense of what that looks like generally. And so as those conversations, when you have an opportunity to update us, I'd appreciate an update, because it's an interesting question, because there are, assets that we generally don't even think about, but they're under our feet every day. And so we need to think about that ultimately. Thank you. Any other questions, observations from council? Seeing none? I don't think I missed anybody online. I will ask Mr. McConnell to read the recommendation.
The recommendation is that council approve the 2023 financial statements as presented by the auditor, Mr. Gerald Price.
Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Price.
Thank you all.
Item 11.2, application for relocation of a cannabis retail store, Summit Cannabis. Report from our manager of planning, Mr. Simolini. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. No presentation on the screen tonight, just a quick oral rundown of the application. So when the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch receives an application for a new cannabis store or for relocation of an existing cannabis store, we have to go through a process with council right now that council needs to endorse that license. In this case, it is for the relocation of Summit Cannabis from its current location at 1161A 7th Avenue, which is the currently also the Tanglefoot Veterinary Clinic, or formerly known as Fernie Sports, if you were around back then, to its new location at Unit 3, 1791 9th Avenue, which is the new commercial building that hosts the Wendy's, Domino's, and Bar Burrito. So our recommendation tonight is that council does endorse this change, and the resolution then goes to the LCRB as part of their consideration for issuance or amendment of the existing permit. One thing to note that I did touch on in the report is that the legislation also notes that we need to notify affected residents, but council can also decide that if there are affected residents or not. And in this case, staff is recommending that because the commercial location is away from residential, actually further away from residential properties than the existing location was, that those existing residents don't need to be notified. With that, our recommendation is that council move forward with endorsement of the license.
Thank you, Mr. Similini. Any questions for Ms. Manager Similini? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I did have one question, and just procedurally, as this is the first time we've encountered this, what happens if it doesn't get endorsed by council?
From what I understand, endorsement from council, if they were to turn it down, then that would likely kill the application from the LCRB. There's also a step in the process where we just have to accept the application as well, which is just an email saying, yeah, we got it. And if we decide to not accept that application, it would also stop the LCRB from approving.
Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just curious, is this also like, do we have to do this for liquor stores or just dispensaries specific? Like if a liquor store was to be moving, would we be seeing this in front of us as well?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Nixon, I'm not entirely sure if the process also includes liquor stores. I know that in the past, we have done structural changes to liquor licenses. For example, I believe when patio started to go on 2nd Avenue, I had to do those structural changes and approve those in order to allow people to have alcohol outside. So that is part of the process, and I believe it's similar to this. But as far as liquor stores go, I can't comment on that.
And I apologize if I missed it in because it's not in the report, although it references nearby residents in your report. Is there a concentric circle that's considered nearby?
Yeah, Your Worship. So that would be up to council to determine. Shy of us we don't have a process or a procedure or a policy for this. If it was written into a policy, say a 50-meter radius or something like that, similar to what we have for variances, that would be the case. I know in the past with the structural changes to liquor licenses, it was essentially just determined at the meeting, like, who are we going to notify? Let's notify everyone up within 100 meters or let's draw a line here. And then that notification went out.
Or in the most recent case, I can remember we just deferred to the liquor control branch, as I recall. We didn't take a position.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from council? Mr. McConnell?
Thank you, Your Worship. The staff recommendation is that council recommend to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch that the cannabis retail store license number 450049 be approved to relocate Summit Cannabis Co. from 1161A 7th Avenue, Fernie, BC to Unit 3, 1791 9th Avenue, Fernie, BC.
Mover, Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Sorry, did I miss your hand, Councillor Shoesmith? Okay, thank you. Apologies. Excellent. Yeah, I think it's it strikes me as a good move. Thank you, Mr. Similini.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Council.
Once again, engineer line on active transportation master plan improvements.
Thank you for having me again. Let me just pull this one up. I should go without presentations. It takes me a long time. I apologize to pull them all up. So I'm here today to get approval to award the contract for construction of sidewalks this summer under the Active Transportation Master Plan rollout. An invitation to tender was issued on April 8th and closed on the 26th for this job. 2 bids were received. Upon analysis, ISL, our consultant, recommend awarding the contract to the lowest bidder and the only compliant bid, which in this case was Marwest Industries, for the amount of just over $625,000. And very excitingly, this bid is under budget compared to our consultant's estimate last year by approximately $125,000. So the projects that would go ahead with this are 7th Street from the Annex Dike to 9th Ave, 9th Street from the same extents, and the missing link along Ridgemont Ave that would tie together the sidewalks on both ends. With this project, we'll be adding a 1.9 meter wide sidewalk to each of these 6 blocks. For 7th and 9th Street, there will be a boulevard to separate the sidewalk from the roadway. But along Ridgemont, we won't do that. The sidewalk will be right beside the curb to tie into the existing sidewalks on both sides. And that ends my second very short presentation for tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Lang. Questions from council? I have to confess, and I've said this before, and I think I raised it last time when we talked about 7th Street. I struggle with this one, particularly as we're creating the contiguous sidewalk in Ridgemont, like we're linking sidewalk with no boulevard. We have a fairly recent sidewalk on 7th Street and no boulevard, so that, and I understand our active transportation master planning suggests a boulevard is a safer option. But now we're putting in a new sidewalk with boulevard for the remainder of the street when the first 3 blocks or two full blocks, I think, have the sidewalk right at the street. And given the construction of that street, the way it narrows, I honestly don't know why we're doing this. I struggle with this in terms of this design.
If I may, as per our discussions last year, we did look over the cross section of the street as the other part of 7th was done just a few years ago, really. And the cross section along that street kind of changes once already. Right near the highway, there is driving lanes and then a parking lane asphalted and then the sidewalk. And then further into the annex, there's driving lanes that are asphalted, then a gravel parking lane, then just lawn on the boulevard. And so this third part will continue the driving lanes being asphalted. The gravel lane will exist, and then there'll be a very small little boulevard between it and the sidewalk, which is going to hug the edge of the right of way. So we're not going to alter the roadway at all, and we're going to maintain that gravel parking lane as well. But I believe, and I wasn't here for this, but there was a more urban cross section closer to the highway. And then the further that it went into the annex, it did become, it's not rural, but more rural without curb and gutter.
Yeah, no, I appreciate how it looks now, but I think the highway in particular creates a natural break in terms of design further into town with the paved parking lane, I guess, between the highway and the road, or paved boulevard, I guess is what we'd call it, and the gravel on the other side beyond the curb. I guess I struggle to understand why we would add a boulevard on a street west of the highway where there is no boulevard up to that point, and you're going to take up, I know it's city property, but you're going to take up a considerable cross section for the remainder of that street when I'm not sure that's 100% necessary.
If I may, we're not going to take up any of the street, like all the 3 lanes that are there, like 2 asphalted driving lanes and the gravel lane. And then the remainder of the city owned property of that boulevard is just lawn in most cases for those residents that live along those blocks. So we will be just taking part of that. We won't be adding boulevard. We'll just be taking part of it to become a sidewalk.
Sorry, what's an asphalted driving lane? I don't.
Like outside the road is asphalt.
Okay.
And so there's one
Sorry,
lane
yeah,
in each
no,
direction. And
I do know what an asphalted driving lane is. But you're familiar with with 7th Street as you look west? Like it narrows, like
The-
it structurally narrows now. The running surface narrows considerably,
right.
almost within not two car widths to the west, to the dike. And I guess I just don't understand, given that it's a fairly recent development on the current part of 7th Street from the highway into 9th Avenue. The lifespan of this is going to be similar to that, I would think, given it's the longevity of the asphalt and the concrete. So I don't know why we wouldn't make it contiguous like we are in Ridgemont. I struggle with that a little bit.
So this grant is for active transportation, and it
Yeah.
only provides money for things like sidewalks or multi-use pathways. We are not touching the road. The asphalt part of the road is narrow there.
Yeah.
It is wide enough to permit one car in each direction, and that was the plan. And then there is those gravel sides for parking. And then further off that is where we will put the new sidewalk, but we're not narrowing or changing anything about
Okay.
the road for cars.
And how wide is the boulevard, sorry, that you're proposing?
It's a very good question that I did not put a cross section in this report.
Okay.
There might be one in one of the previous reports that is linked to this one. I can get that answer to you later.
Sure, if you would mind. Councillor McIsaac got a question, then Councillor Audia Kelly.
Well, I guess more of a comment, yeah, Your Worship, with regards to like thinking about your comments with that. I'm wondering, are we seeing the difference here because in the change and adoption of the active transportation master plan? And while I understand where you're going for, and that now we have one street, it's going to have two different approaches to having a sidewalk on there. If the long-term goal is to have all of those priority sections with active transportation sidewalks, have a boulevard separation from the road and all that stuff, I mean, we have to start doing it somewhere where we're doing the construction. So yes, for a while, there's going to be some differences, perhaps even on same streets, but if we don't start doing it, when are we going to get sidewalks that are consistent with the plan that we've created? So at some point we have to start doing it.
Yeah, which I think is fair.
Yeah.
But is it now where, like, I guess if I look at the work we've recently done on, is that 9th Street and 11th, you know, sort of brand new configurations, modernized the streetscape, I think it looks great. Like, I think that's great. And I think, you know, as that were to carry on, I do wonder, given the recent construction that's already on 7th Street and continuing that to it will eventually potentially be all replaced together, rather than have a mismatched streetscape. Now let's make it consistent and then replace it as we replace others going forward. That's just why I struggle with it.
If I may, for clarification, are you asking us to pave the gravel side parking area and put in a curb and gutter?
No, I'm actually suggesting the sidewalk continue to the annex dike as proposed without a boulevard, that it be on the street the same as it is, consistent with 7th Street to this point.
If we move the sidewalk to right beside the asphalt, then we are removing parking.
Okay. Councillor Audia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was just wondering if Engineer Line might have any photos.
I will go back to the presentation, but I only have one of each, so I don't know if it will. So at the top left is 7th Street, and that gravel in the foreground is the parking lane that is becoming overrun by weeds, but that is the gravel parking lane. And you can see further past that alleyway intersection, there is a weedy gravel area and then a grass boulevard before the power pole. And so on that grass boulevard area would be where we would put the sidewalk. So we maintain the parking, maintain the road, but take away some of the grass boulevard for walkers.
Sorry. Mr. Heisler, did you have a comment?
Thanks, Council, for letting me jump in. We have a council resolution to bring back the engagement on the ATMP, the engagement on the 2023 roads program, and how we ended up with those cross sections. And I believe I'm on the May 28th committee of the whole. Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong.
Next week, May 21st.
May 21st. And that one will go into kind of how the cross sections were chosen and modified for that specific project. But a lot of the philosophy in the ATMP is the pathway uptake by the citizens. The further away you are from travel lanes, the better. So that pushes all multi-use pathways and all sidewalks to the extent of the roads. As well, those boulevards are then used for snow storage instead of pushing it onto perceived property of residents nearby. So there's a clear delineation between pedestrians, traffic, and snow storage. So I'm not sure if that's enough for now until that report comes back on the 21st, but I wanted to kind of, like, I've been digging into that resolution and gathering those answers, and maybe I can answer some of those questions in there.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Heisler. And I'm not trying to be obstinate here. I do appreciate there's no perfect solution. Like even the one I'm proposing, people cross the sidewalk to park on their property. So parallel to the sidewalk, for example, which is less than ideal on its own. People cross the sidewalks all down 9th Avenue just to get in their driveway. So it's not unheard of. Yeah, I would, yeah, I'm not gonna object to this. I just hope we've thought this through in terms of how wide that boulevard is, what we're actually accomplishing in terms of parking versus, you know, changing the contiguous nature of the streetscape. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I mean, I think you bring up an excellent point about consistency of design and what expectation management for everyone. But one of the things, and I think this harkens back a little bit to a discussion that we had a number of meetings ago with regards to putting together significantly sized projects in advance so that we have lots of opportunity for RFPs and they're of a sufficient size that the pool of potential bidders is large enough. And I think an approach that gets us to the place where, well, much like we did when we did 9th Avenue, which is let's do the whole thing so it's all consistent. So hopefully we can get to that at this point with some of these sidewalk ventures where, okay, we're going to do the sidewalk for the whole thing so it is consistent from beginning to end. I think it looks better and it's less likely to confuse people, especially in winter when there starts to be snow cover and so on. And
yeah.
So I appreciate your concern and I think we can get there, but it's probably going to take a little while.
I suspect that's right. And, you know, I think as we've also discussed it around this table before, is the challenge of, you know, these old neighborhoods with varying streetscapes and some where residents paid for their own section of sidewalk. And so you had blocks with one section of sidewalk in the middle of the block and no more. So I appreciate the challenges that represents, but Mr. Heisler?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind council, this year's project was primarily chosen because there was no utilities in it. So, you know, our water utility money was sent to the reservoir project. So this was like no utility type project, which is why it's kind of parsed out the way it is. In the future, we can do our best to group it together, but we may run into a similar situation that we did with this year where it's kind of a missing sidewalk project or we park it for a year.
Yeah, fair enough. Any other discussion, questions from council? Councillor McIsaac.
Just, I apologize because this is going to be a little smart alecky, your worship. But no matter how long I've sat here for, I'm constantly astonished at the cost of doing something that should be relatively straightforward. $600,000 to do
Yeah.
3 stretches of sidewalks. And it reminds me of, there was a thing that was done by the former mayor of Golden, Christina Bentley, where she had put out a challenge for her community. We're doing 1 block of sidewalk. How much should this cost?
Yeah.
And the guesses by the community were off by orders of magnitude. No one had any idea how much these things cost. And yeah, the more we can tell people about that and sort of wrap our heads around it, like,
Agreed.
and that is one of the challenges of going to projects, is even just doing 3 stretches of sidewalks is an astonishing amount of money. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you get those statistics whenever we attend one of those conferences. Somebody tells you just how much their 1 kilometer of
Right.
road costs, and it's the costs are horrendous. Yeah. Sorry, Ms. Line.
If I may, I could remind that we also are receiving partially a grant for this project. So we're not paying for the whole thing. $500,000 of it is coming from BC,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal. And the cost that came in, the lowest bid that I'm asking for us to accept, it actually makes it so that we are maximizing our grant usage and minimizing our own city funds usage, which is very surprising, but also very happy for me.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I, for one, I'm very excited to see some sidewalks going down. I think this is great. One of the biggest gripes we often hear is about these sorts of things. And for my part, I feel this is money well spent, and I'm happy to see it done.
Thank you. Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. Always in support of core infrastructure work. This is really good. Only 2 points that I want to bring up, Your Worship. You mentioned the 9th Street and 11th Street from last year. And if I remember it right, we had quoted it at around $600,000 and we came in at $1.1 million. I'm just wondering if the staff is more confident this time around compared to last year. That'll be my first question. The second question is, if Your Worship, if you remember, there were a little bit of communication gap between our project and what the citizens thought we would be doing. And if you remember, there were a couple of housing units that had real issues with the work when I'm talking about the 9th to 11th Street. So my question to staff here is, have you guys done everything possible to engage with all the citizens who will be affected by this? And how confident are you that next year around we won't have the same issue as we had last year? Thanks.
If I may, Councillor Ramadas, could you repeat the first question? My boss was talking in my ear. I'm so sorry. But first, before you repeat, may I answer your second question? So my boss is coming back on the 14th to discuss the communications that happened around the ATMP and last year's projects. So I believe that will give a more fulsome discussion on the communications that is expected of such a project. So at this moment, we are planning to do very similar communications to the public, and we have not begun because right now we do not have a construction project go ahead, but we would do the same as we would, which would be hand delivered notices to every household, mail out this year to every, if the house is owned by someone who doesn't live there, mail out to that individual as well, and then participate in discussions that fall out of that. And now if you may repeat your first question, thank you.
The first question was where we came in at the end of it, right? We had estimated it at around $600,000. We came in at 1.1 million. There was a little bit of a scope increase. I appreciate that. I'm just wondering if there are no such eventualities that might happen with this project also.
If I may, the bids coming in from the contractors are coming in under the estimate by our consultant from last year by $125,000. So my budget is higher right now by $125,000 than the estimated costs.
And you have a level of confidence in the bids that you've received.
And I repeat what the mayor said.
Just wanted to confirm, your worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramadas. Any other questions? If there are none, Mr. McConnell, would you?
Certainly, the staff recommendation is that council authorize staff to award the contract for construction of the 2024 Active Transportation Master Plan improvements to Mar West Industries.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Whew. Thank you, Ms. Line. Oh, and we've got alternate Councillor Shoesmith in attendance as well, which is lovely. Item 11.4, discharge of statutory right-of-way report from our Director of Corporate Administrative Services.
Yes, thank you, Council. I'm sharing my screen with respect to this particular report, and I am just going to move that so I can start this. Awesome. Okay, so what I'm showing here is it's a diagram of a statutory right-of-way. And if you take a look with this laser pointer, you'll see this is the area where the aquatic center is. And of course, the outdoor rink, et cetera. And this is the area of the statutory right-of-way. And this particular statutory right-of-way protects the capacity for the holder of the statutory right-of-way to construct a railway and other utilities. This right-of-way impacts this property over here. This is where the Elk Family Society project with respect to affordable housing and childcare spaces is going to go. So I'm going to go to my next screen to get a bit closer. You can see it basically covers a lot of their construction area. Their architect identified this particular statutory right-of-way as being problematic for them to be able to obtain a building permit, among other things, and to be able to build in the area of the project that they're looking to do. This statutory right-of-way, along with the lands, was all now owned by the city of Fernie.
Mm-hmm.
So the city of Fernie owns the statutory right-of-way and is being requested to discharge it as it affects the lot that would be here. I don't have a diagram of the lot itself to show, but essentially the goal is to discharge it from this space here to enable the project to continue to advance. A discharge of a statutory right-of-way by council requires council approval. Staff cannot do that. So the request of council tonight is that council approve the discharge of that right-of-way as it relates to that property. So with that, I will stop my share.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Any questions, comments from council? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Looking at the diagrams in the presentation, it appears the statutory right-of-way continues on for quite a ways, which I believe is also all city land. And I'm just wondering from a efficiency perspective, can we just get rid of the entirety of the statutory right, discharge the entirety of it as opposed to kind of piecemealing it by lot?
We could. At this point, though, we didn't investigate that with respect to our solicitor. It's not just a railway, it's other utilities and other potential facilities that the city might actually want to protect in the future. So before going that far, it would just be not recommended to necessarily, we didn't investigate that at this time. The request was made very quickly and probably about 2 weeks ago. So essentially it was put together quickly for this.
Further?
Just as a follow-up to that response, then if we discharge this section, does that then orphan the rest of the right-of-way if we can't connect it to whatever it's currently connected to?
if I may, not necessarily, as it does have the far end like to the southeast corner of the lot, as well as other areas where the properties can be accessed. For instance, other areas of land that we own, we could then extend the statutory right of way towards Pine Avenue, for instance, if we're to do a 90-degree.
Yeah, fascinating to me. For those who aren't aware, there used to be, well, two things. The Coal Creek Railway would come through there in a loop, and there used to be the Morrissey, Fernie, Michelle Railway shop sitting right where the Aquatic Center is. In fact, look kind of like the Aquatic Center. I think that they've sort of lifted some design elements from that. But yeah, as a boy, that was great. I've said once before in this meeting about the greatest fear of insurance providers are 13-year-old boys. We used to go in there all the time. Anyway, little aside, I'll ask Mr. McConnell to read the recommendation.
I think his worship just admitted to some shenanigans.
Indeed.
So the staff recommendation is that council approve the discharge of statutory right-of-way XH 11928 as it relates to the city-owned property Lot A, District Lot 4589, Kootenai District Plan 18686, except Plan NEP 71387.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Brings us to item 13.1, a notice of motion by Councillor Nixon. I'll ask Director McConnell to read the motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of motion by Councillor Nixon is that be it resolved that council direct staff to bring back a report which will consider the feasibility of water meters for the city of Fernie. This report should include, but not be limited to, our current water usage patterns, benefits, technological options, smart meters, costs and financing options for the utility, potential regulatory requirements, and any other concerns that staff deem necessary to create a comprehensive report.
So moved by Councillor Nixon.
Yes.
Awesome. Seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Doing a little bit of background research on this, I found from May 2014 with the West Fernie annexation that water meters were supposed to be a component of the upgrade to the water system there, and curious how that didn't happen.
Does anybody have sufficient background to answer that question? Mr. Bornowski.
Ms. Weir, our manager of engineering, we'd have to do some background research on the documents. None of us at the table here have that history or that knowledge at hand. But I do believe you are correct. I just don't understand where that changed.
Councillor Audia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm just curious if staff can give us an idea of the amount of time that a report like that will take and how that will affect their work plan and other projects they've got going.
Mr. Bornowski.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to give a little bit of an intro and then I'll ask Director Heisler to speak more to it. It's a significantly complex report. There's a lot of data. It's the right amount of complexity for the matter. They're significant. Water meters and metering is a significant undertaking, not just in terms of the capital investment, but also then the technology, the billing process, reading the meters, how you process that, and the changes to your bylaws and your utility fees. However, they are absolutely critical to advancing water conservation in a comprehensive way. So I say this not as a way to try and undermine the intent, because it is something that staff believe is truly very important to our future water conservation efforts. But it's not something we currently have capacity. I am bringing a projects dashboard to council in the near future, in the coming weeks, and council will receive a briefing on that before it comes to a public meeting as well. We would be looking at pulling projects out of the current major projects list to jump this in currently, or we would be scoping it, potentially implementing it for early next year as a significant kickoff. That was my initial discussion with Director Heisler, but I'll ask him to add a little more color to that if possible, please.
Mr. Boranowski covered it quite well. As council's well, I'll kind of talk about some side projects that are related to the similar goal. As council will remember, the water works bylaw, last direction on that was to go away, do some communications and come back. Kind of assessing the snowpack this winter, we've decided to accelerate the water conservation bylaw, which is modeled after Cranbrook's outdoor watering bylaw. And I think I'm on June 11th for that one. I'm going to look to Mr. McConnell to correct me if I'm wrong again. However, those two bylaws kind of work together, and we'll be coming back to council on that date to ask for the go-ahead to communicate both of those together, and then get some readings in and try to get the water conservation bylaw in place before this summer. As council's well aware of the current snowpack conditions, there's elevating concerns in our department for water conservation. We had really good luck last year with our voluntary water restrictions and the community stepping up and knocking things down. But there are examples of some water abuse out there that we kind of need the bylaws to enforce. However, water meters is kind of, we're running out of options, and that's going to be the only thing we'll have left at some point once we've got the bylaws in place. So it's somewhat inevitable in our future, and looking at how much our ability to produce clean, drinkable water and the demand coming from the community are starting to pull apart on us and separate. So that's why we've kind of accelerated the water conservation bylaw. Hopefully that provides a little bit of what else is happening towards the same goal.
Thank you. Councillor Adi Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just curious if staff might be aware, thinking that it is a lot for staff to take on, considering we've got the wastewater, we've got our well, we've got all those other things. Is there like a grant that where we could sort of give this to consultants to look at it for us versus having staff having to deal with it? Just thinking from the green perspective.
Through to council, I would have to look into if there would be a grant to like scope out the project more than anything, as opposed to a grant that may fund a portion of the actual meter installs themselves. I don't have that off the top of my head right now.
So if I could ask, sorry, if we were to adopt this resolution this evening, is the next step, Mr. Heisler, you would then, because it's a considerable amount of work, as we've determined, it feels like critically important work. Would you then take it and find the right priority in terms of your work plan and come back and report as to when we could expect that to advance? Is that sort of the next step?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, as council's aware, we have some conditions on our bylaw.
Yeah.
We're unpacking how much work resolving some of those conditions may be. So you may have some competing priorities where we would have to like discuss what we want to do in-house and what we can do in-house and what we would have to go to a consultant for. I'm hopefully in the next couple of months, we have a better idea of what's expected of us to resolve those conditions. But I think that's a better discussion to have at that time when we're looking at some conditions we need resolved on, and then water meters, and we can talk about how we're going to implement it in-house and when council wants to accelerate that or start pivoting work plans.
All right. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. Water conservation and the meters and all of the things that we're doing in water, all critically important. Important enough that I would rather not rush into it, and I would rather keep staff fairly focused, but be looking to them to give us some feedback in some fashion about what this would look like for scoping into sort of the next round of project ideas for later this year and earlier next year. I think that would be, a lot of stuff has been planned for this summer and the fall already, and I really hate to detract too much for that. But I also would like to not lose sight of this. So that's what that's where I would like to see this go.
Thank you. I apologize, Councillor Shoesmith. I know you raised your hand quite early in this conversation. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Forgive me if my voice cracks and I start with a falsetto because I have the worst flu. There's several resources involved here. And I'm not thinking about water. We've got our staff time, we've got our money, and we've got the public as well here. And so we know there's a lot of problems with our water system already. We have many clearly identifiable problems that we can point to that we can be fixing with our limited staff time and limited dollars. When we know we already have critical problems, seeking to find additional problems to fix is, I think, the wrong choice because we already have more problems than available credit to fix them. And the same goes for our staff time. I think that someday this might be a very important discussion. I don't think that day is soon because, I mean, if it really were push coming to shove, we've got like a golf course. We've got some really leaky lines that we're aware of. And again, we don't have the staff capacity or the available credit to take on all of these problems at once. I would suggest that when the handful of individuals wasting a ton of water become the largest problem that we're dealing with, we pursue this at that point. Thank you.
Councillor Ramadas?
Thanks for your worship. I echo Councillor Shoesmith's sentiment there. It may be a case of analysis paralysis here. We know certain places like the golf course is a big user of water. So maybe there is an option to go after some of the less technically difficult solutions here. That would be one thing. And also, I'm curious to know, I know Councillor Nixon is a big proponent of staff time and strategic priorities and so on. I wonder why he brought this up at this juncture, knowing fully well that our strategic priorities are fully locked in with our staff. Thanks.
Thank you, Worship. Since I've been sitting here in 2018, I have heard many times that I've asked the question about water meters, and I've heard many times that it's political will, and we need to start the ball rolling sometime. And I'm not saying drop everything and go after water meters. I'm saying put it on our radar, put it into next year's plans. I just want this to be part of it. I see in our Water Smart Action Plan from 2010.2, implement a staged approach to introducing water meters to utility customers. Forever Fernie report says, state-of-the-art water and wastewater systems cover all of Fernie's local urban areas and maximize water conservation and potential impacts. And that was from 2012. Yeah. I mean, we're looking at, I mean, if we kick this down the road again, you know, it's going to be, you know, we're in a 40-year drought. I mean, it's not good times for, you know, for water in our communities. They accurately measure how much everybody's using. It's open and transparent what people are paying. Right now, we have restaurants on the main street that have to count the number of seats and pay $1.99. That's part of the bylaw per seat. Now, who goes in and who counts that? With a water meter, it's just, you know how much water they're using, and they get charged for that amount of water. So, and I'm not saying that, you know, we put this, it becomes like a big, you know, burden on our utility users. I'm saying that this is step one, right? We've seen this again and again. We've missed out on a huge grant to do our West Fernie. That's what you know, one of the directors said as well. And we need to get this going.
Thank you. I actually like that reasoning. Like, let's get it on a work plan. it can stay below the line, as it were, until such time as we have the resources to action it. But if we get it on a work plan, we're not going to lose sight of it, and we're not going to miss another grant opportunity that comes along. We will have a resolution on file in our resolution tracker that says water meters, and somebody will say, hey, don't we have a resolution on water meters? We should look at this. Maybe there's an opportunity. It sounds like we've missed opportunities like that before because we haven't had it on anybody's work plan. And I very much appreciate what you said. You're not asking everybody to drop everything. But this needs consideration. Staff has already indicated it's vitally important for water conservation now and in the future. So let's put it on the work plan somewhere. And whether it's next year, to Councillor McIsaac's point, or Mr. Heiser at some point comes back and tells us, you know, we can start this in the summer of 2027 or whatever that response is. At least we know we have it somewhere in the work plan. And I think that's important to your point. Like, let's get it on the radar and keep it on the radar. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I fully support that rationale and that reasoning. And also the other end of the spectrum could very much be true. We could have something happen in the next month, 2 months, 6 months that this suddenly becomes a much higher priority, and we've already got it on the work plan to to action it straight away.
Yeah. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Any money we spend on this ahead of fixing known issues, it's just a bad return on investment of that time and money. In addition to that, the perception of this will be that the city, which does not have its own house in order in this respect, is instead choosing to go around and nag the individual. Perhaps that was a poor choice of words, but I don't think this will go over any better than a lead balloon. Thank you.
No, and I appreciate that perspective, but I think as we're framing it this evening, getting it on a work plan, I think matters, because it again will be one of those items that will languish until somebody once again brings it forward, and we are facing competing priorities. If we have it on a work plan, I'm not suggesting either that we knock a bunch of stuff off, but we have it somewhere, call it below the line, so that every time Mr. Heiser looks at his work plan, he knows it's there somewhere. Mr. Heiser, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I have a couple things that I can add into the conversation here. I'll look to Ms. Line if I fumble, but we do have on our work plan this year the scan of the city, which is detecting water leakage. I intentionally at the beginning, we were targeting the low pressure zones, but the cost for a full city scan was comparable. So we're going ahead with the full city scan. That should get us within a block of a major leak. But will we find a needle in a haystack? I don't know. We can cross our fingers on that one. And the other thing I wanted to add in, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What we could do is, at no cost, we could reach out to our engineering consultant and get them to scope out a program for analyzing what Councillor Nixon has on the table right now. Then at least we have it in our work plan, and we have generally a number to contract it out that we could use going forward. And then, in the future years, we can add some inflationary cost to that and have a ballpark idea what it would cost for council to get this information back to them from a consultant. Did I miss anything? She seems happy enough.
Well, and sorry, Councillor Nixon, and it does occur to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we had at a minimum consultant scoping report, are we not then in a better position if a grant rolls around to say we could action this based on this grant?
Through to Mr. Mayor and Council, I think it would really depend on the parameters of the grant.
Fair.
Just having a consultant's scoping report may not be enough. We may need to take some of those first steps.
Right. Councillor Nixon?
Thank you, Worship. You think about meters in general. And, you know, when I got solar installed last year at my house, I became really aware of how many kilowatt hours I was using. And you really start to think about how much your household is using. Water right now is like going to the smorgasbord. You can go and you can sit down and you can bring as much as you want onto your plate. You don't have to eat it. You can just let your water run. You can water in the middle of the day, which was going to change soon. But once you have it metered and you are given that information that you're using this amount of water, then you can adjust your habits.
Mhm.
So I think we have them for our gas, we have them for all the other utilities, right?
Mhm.
So we have gas and electricity. So water's the last thing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Looking to you, Mr. Heisler, you're kibitzing up there. Anything you want to add?
We were just talking briefly about the scan that we're doing. The idea was to target within a block, Ms. Line corrected me, to a block and a half.
Okay.
But following that, the idea was to use our internal staff to go to these block and a half zones and see if we could narrow in on actual substantial leaks.
And if I may add to that, what this water bylaw is going to do is also be able to action if the repair is on private property. Currently, we have no avenue to have the homeowner or us repair the leak on private property. So if the leaks are found on private property with this bylaw passing, then we can get that part fixed as well. So talking to whose house, like both houses, this municipal house versus the private house will be able to be cleaned up with this type of leak inspection.
I'm going to propose a question to Mr. McConnell. Like in terms of this resolution, it feels a bit, based on our discussion and the work planning discussion, it feels a bit prescriptive. Is there a change we can make to it such that it gets on the work plan, stays on the work plan until such time as it's either abandoned by resolution or enacted?
And I see Councillor Ramadas has his hand up, but I can answer that first if you wish. To my thinking, in order for us to create that kind of a potential amendment that council might want to see, we would want some time to address that. One of the suggestions I might have is for council to choose to table this motion to be brought back to the June 11th meeting when Director Heisler is correct with this date and is bringing forward his water conservation bylaw, and that perhaps this motion can be considered at that time as well. And in the meantime, we could potentially come up with some wording for a recommended amendment that if a council member wishes to move that amendment, we could work with that.
Thank you. Councillor Ramadas and then Councillor McIsaac.
Thanks, Your Worship. I would support what you were saying if it was amended in a way that it just reflects in our work plan. In the current state right now, I wouldn't be supporting it, but what you said completely jives with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I actually think that the way the motion is worded right now, it doesn't have a specific timeline associated with it. So the request to bring back a report could be bring back a report in summer of 2026 or whatever the case may be. That may be a little longer than Councillor Nixon would prefer. But the point of the story being that in the current format right now, there's no direction to staff for a specific time.
Yeah.
So I think we could pass the notice with communication, and I'll, ask maybe Director McConnell or CEO Boranowski to see if more information than the direction of the discussion of council about where we would like when this would become important. If that needs to be in the body of the motion or whether that's been sufficiently communicated that the motion could survive as it is, but knowing what the expected timeline is.
Thank you. I'll get Councillor Shoesmith to speak and then we'll Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thank you. I'm not opposed to having this as a plan to be enacted at some point in the future when it's more pertinent. And I would support that. But I definitely don't support actioning this at this time.
Councillor Roddy Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. This one, questions for Director Heisler and Engineer Line. I was speaking to the folks in Sparwood. They've had meters for quite some time, but they haven't charged. They're going in that direction. But what they discovered was lots and lots and lots of leaks in their system. And as we know, their infrastructure is considerably younger. We're going to do a scan. Can you just give us like kind of a ballpark idea of how long the scan will take?
If I may, the scan will be done remotely, and then we will get the results for the entire town. One scan will provide us about what they estimate is about 30% of leaks in the system. So you need to do 3 scans to get potentially the entire system done. However, with the current job loading for our water crew, that's far more than enough for them to pinpoint from this circle has a leak, find it, you know, for them in over a year. So.
Further, Your Worship?
Yep.
So as we find leaks in our system, then they have to go into the work plan and the budget to repair those leaks before we could say reasonably charging the houses in that neighborhood for water if it's our system that's leaking.
If I may, in that, so through the IICP and the age of our infrastructure, we have a general good idea where the older pipes are and thus the leaks are and the types of pipes. With this scan, that'll just add another layer of accuracy on top of what we already know. However, you know, the capital programs that we will execute through the IICP are funded from taxation also. So we are in a way already charging for those repairs. Generally, like the bylaws that are coming forward are quite big gaps and missing foundational elements for managing our water utility. And once those are kind of done, all we have left are repairing pipes and considering meters. So, I mean, it's this conversation is fairly timely, I guess.
Mr. Baranowski.
Thank you. If I can, to Councillor Shoesmith's point and others, repairing our leaks in our system, distribution and local servicing is really, really important. We will find once we've done our scans and we've used these types of methods to repair our known leaks and have bylaw tools in place that help us identify and have repaired or effect repairs on leaks on private properties, that usage-based billing and the additional data from meters will tell us where we have additional undetected leaks. They're a huge tool for identifying leaky systems, and we wouldn't be billing residents for leaks or for usage that wasn't related to their private property. So a leak in our system wouldn't drive, or not our system, a leak in the distribution or the community's water system wouldn't drive billing to one customer or group of customers. The metering is at the residence or the place of business. But it does create a more equitable system where people are billed based on the amount of water they use and therefore their burden on the system. And we can use the data on our distribution and what we produce. What we then know is lost based on what is then metered overall in terms of consumption to help make that more fair between general taxation and utility fees and individual funding. But it is a significant project, and as Mr. Heisler and others have said, and Ms. Line, we have a lot of capital work on the way, including the scan to identify leaks in our system, shore up our bylaw gaps, and then we will have to go there if we want to achieve further improvements in our system over time.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I'll be quick this time. Just to clarify, in the long run, this is a great idea, and I think that we should indeed be charging people for what they're actually using. I just don't feel it's the right thing at this time. And in addition to that, I think this scanning for leaky pipes, excellent stuff. Like that's great. So I'm in full support of all of that.
Mr. Baranowski, I'll just ask, sorry, Mr. Heisler, go ahead.
Just While we have the scan front of mind, I wanted to mention to council, you know, we just spent the money for the scan this year, and we're attempting to chase down these leaks with internal staff. You know, it may come to a discussion point in the future where we want to consider hiring someone to do that, to accelerate it, as we have concerned about capacity and the weight of that on our regular maintenance if we're out doing our routine maintenance and then now chasing down leaks. So I just didn't want to lose that piece of information into the expectation that internal staff will chase down all these leaks in the low pressure system, but
Right.
we're going to try it on our own this year.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Baranowski, I'm just going to ask you, based on Councillor McIsaac's comments, well, I guess I'd ask Councillor Nixon. It feels, given that we're talking about the water conservation bylaw on June 11th, and this feels like this is incredibly germane to that conversation. Will you be comfortable tabling it until that time?
Yeah, I think that could be appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah. July 11th.
June 11th.
June 11th. Is that 2026 or 20?
If I may, Your Worship,
Yeah.
to that point, and I appreciate Councilor McIsaac's comments quite a lot. However, I was going to suggest that the motion, can't speak, the motion that is on the table is significantly stronger worded and has a lot more direction to staff than what Director Heisler was suggesting that he could do to at least have some details on the table. And so that work would not address the motion, and we would have an unresolved resolution on the table until some is complete. So I would submit that I would ask that Director Heisler be prepared on June 11th to describe what he would do around that, and then we can maybe make the motion meet that at the very least, as opposed to having a motion that has significant work on the table. This is just identifying the resolution that would be on the table would be unmet for a long time.
Appreciate that. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a process question then. Knowing how long it takes a notice of motion to actually get to the place where we have a conversation about it, I'm concerned that if we proceed with, or if we defeat this, is it still going to be back in time for June 11th for discussion and the creation of a new motion, or are we going to end up with another 6 to 8 week process?
Fair question.
Okay.
If I may, if you recall the one that we did with Councillor Hamilton too, we had that same conversation. What I would suggest is that the intent of the motion would essentially be the same on June 11th. If council was wishing to move forward with the motion as is, they could do so. If council is directing to amend the motion, so essentially we're looking to motion to table it, to bring it back to June 11th for consideration under other business as is. And then at that time, if council wished to move forward with it exactly as it is, they could, or if council wished to make amendments to it at that time, they could. Same as we did with Councillor Hamilton's and the EV.
Councillor McIsaac.
In that case, Your Worship, I'll move to table the motion.
Seconder. Councillor Nixon. Any further discussion?
If I can confirm that is direction to table it, to bring it back to June 11th.
Yes.
Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Very robust discussion. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, moves us on to item 15. I think we have time. Reports from council. I'll start with our panelists online, if that's okay. Councillor Shoesmith.
Not a ton to report, just things are pretty fantastic, you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ramadas.
Thanks, Your Worship. I've barely been in town for last 10-15 days, so nothing to report here.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Nothing to report this week.
Councillor Nixon.
I too have nothing to report. Thank you.
Councillor Nadia Kelly.
Well, I guess I get to report. Actually, I attended yesterday a very nice information session Sparwood at their lovely Chamber of Commerce building with councillors from Elkford and Sparwood and Mayor Wilkes with Fernie Pride. The presentation was excellent. Young Roman gave us a really informative presentation on transgender folks, some of their extreme challenges that they have with mental health. One of the asks was, what more can we do as local government to make people feel safe in their communities? So if I can throw that out there for everybody to think about. And I actually, Youth Councillor Annis isn't here, but I actually suggested they maybe speak to Youth Councillor Annis to see if he could help with some tips, because they're wanting to engage youth. And what better person than Youth Councillor Annis to know more about youth. So it was excellent. Kudos to Fernie Pride. They're really working hard throughout the whole valley. So, they gave kudos to Fernie as being an open community, but we still have some of our challenges too. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Nothing to report, Your Worship.
I don't have a lot to report either, except as with many of you, I attended the Rotary's Feast for a Cause since we last met, and very much enjoyed myself. And I don't know that anyone's heard how much money they raised, but they were. It was a lovely event and well organized. On the weekend, I attended the East Kootenay Mine Industrial Safety Association 101st Zone Mine Rescue Competition in Elkford, and that was a great event, one very close to my heart, having been a mine rescue competitor and team member in years past. And anecdotally spent a week with Tom Hopkins, actually, at Green Hills in the late 90s, because we were flooded out for training at Coal Mountain, and the Green Hills team mentored us in our first trip as a mine rescue team to the provincials. And so I have a very fond memory of that experience. And had our Housing Solutions Working Group meeting, monthly meeting today, very productive. And I want to thank Director Lennox for attending on staff's behalf. I think it was a very productive meeting, and just wanted to share with council, it is one of those, it was an idea that is now needs some structure around it. And so we're working, we had a very good conversation around structure today with that group. So we have working on terms of reference, and we'll have that clarified and share that with council when it's done. With that, I will ask Mr. McConnell to read resolution 16.1, under 16.1, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 90 sub 1 sub K of the Community Charter, as the subject matter being considered at this time relates to negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal service that are at their preliminary stages.
Mover, Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? All in favor? We are now closed. Thank you.